It's only doing it once I put it live. The rest of the camera is fine. Every video is fine. Every picture is fine. Everything's fine, except this.
Is it possible it's your phone?
I doubt it. Everything else works. But I don't really care.
I think I fixed it.
Oh, look at that. What was it?
I don't know. I just flipped the camera back and forth.
Okay, there we go. Who's that good-looking guy there?
Rabbi.
Wow, unbelievable. Someone told me a story. That in Vienna. It's very cute. Some chassid finds a mirror. Never saw a mirror. Doesn't know what, he sees this piece of glass. Picks it up, looks, psh, wow. It's a Chassidic looking guy. So every day before davening, in order to arouse himself to daven properly, he looks at the picture of this tzaddik in the mirror. Wow. And then he puts it down. So his wife sees him doing this for a while. What's he looking at? So finally, one day she decides he goes out and she picks up the mirror and she sees a woman. Ah, chutzpah! That's what he's looking at before davening. I'll give it to him. Okay. Is Soda v'Is Soda. We're 5 lines up. On the bottom of page Shin Samach Zayin. Valpi Marsha Kosav B'Zayah, the Zayah says, Is Soda v'Is Soda. What we learned yesterday was Melech, that the Melech l'Soda nevad, that the Melech is affected by the Soda. In Pshat, it means that a fleshly king requires the wheat that grows in the field in order to sustain himself. In Pnimius, what was it? That the Melech, Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, are elevated by virtue of their revelation in the Soda, which we spent a great deal of time talking about yesterday, and if you don't know what we said, okay, so go look back at the shiur on YouTube yesterday, just don't look at the picture and you'll be fine. Okay. So now the Rebbe is going to continue to explain the inyan of Soda. Valpi Mashakaza B'Zayah, the Zayah says, Is Soda ve'is Soda. There is a Soda and there is a Soda. In other words, there's 2 different levels of Soda. Soda Kedusha, the field of holiness, the Soda de Leumas Zeh, and the field of the other side, the field of Klipa. V'yesh Leimar. And the Rebbe harkens back to that Maamer that we mentioned at the very beginning. There's many Ani L'Dodi, V'Dodi Li, and B'chal Elul Maamer, the Rebbe obviously, but the 2 most famous Ani L'Dodi Maamer are the 2 that are printed in Melukat Gimel from Tafshin Lamed Beis, and Melukat Dalet. This is the wood we're learning from Tafshin Chaf Vav. So that footnote says, if you want to see further on this, so look and see Melukat Gimel. V'yesh Leimar. The inyan melech l'soda neva, the idea of the melech is somehow affected by the field. And what does that mean? Shal yedei rida, by virtue of the descent of amshocha and the being drawn down l'soda into the field, nasa ilui, is brought about an elevation, b'melechi law, in the upper king, in the lofty king, in other words, in the Yud Gimel Harachamim, who be'ikar is essentially Al Yadei Shagilui the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim Shalamayla Mishtalshlus is essentially the fact that the revelation of these 13 attributes of mercy, which are Lamayla Mishtalshlus, meaning they come from a level beyond the 4 worlds. Right? We said, Seve, this is infinite godly light. The 4 worlds is the place of the level of Ur Mamale, the light that fills vessels, the light that expresses itself in relative finitude. The Bechlalus hu melech ilah, that in general this is the lofty king. Who gamli Yisrael, the ikar is that the revelation of this incredibly powerful level of godliness is gamli Yisrael and imsarim b'midbar. That it's found in the Jews, it affects the Jews that are also in the midbar, which we said earlier in the Maamer, right? That we learned about the Soda. The Rebbe here in this Maamer does not mention the ear, which plays a fairly prominent role in the other Rebbe's Maamer, but not in our Maamer. It is mentioned even once, right? The king has a palace, There's also the city. There's also the Soda. And in this Maamer, the Rebbe mentions the Midbar. Who's the Jew in the Midbar? The Jew in the Midbar is the person who's put himself in a place that he's insensitive to Elokus. He's done actions that distance him from godliness. Why is the king not revealed there? Well, that represents a place of non-godliness, so to speak. Even though we say Leis Aser Panu, there is no place devoid of him. God is obviously the source of all states of existence. But there is such a thing in spirituality called Midbar. And what is the Midbar? A place where people have pushed godliness out of that place by virtue of their actions. So if the Eibishter isn't revealed there, you have to leave that place in order to touch the Eibishter. Go to the Soda. But why is the king in the Soda? Essentially, the king is in the Soda for the Jews who are in the Midbar. That's why he's in the Soda, because he wants those Jews in the Midbar to be able to access him. The Soda de Lumazeh, where are they? They're in the Soda of the other side, Soda of Klipa, of negative reality. That's the Midbar. Shal Yedei Zeh, what happens? So the Melech comes to the Soda. But the fact that the king is in the Soda affects the Jew who's not in the Soda and arouses in that Jew a desire to leave the Midbar and go to the Soda, which means he becomes aware of his inner desire to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? That's what Melech B'Soda arouses in us, that our Ratzon Panimi, that our inner desire is to be connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shal Yedei Zem Misgala HaRatzon Panimi Shalahem. Through this, it's revealed their inner desire, their true desire, which at this point until this point, might not have resonated in their conscious reality. It's there. It's always there, because the Jew always has an Nefesh Elokis. The question is the Jew conscious of that aspect of themselves that wants to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So Elul arouses that. V'yotzim midbar, and they leave the midbar. They go out of the midbar. Soda de Lumazeh, l'soda, and they go to the field. The Kedusha, the field of Kedusha, last page, imagine that.
When we talk about the midbar, we're talking about the Kripa side of the Sadeh.
Midbar and Soda, the Klipa is the same. Soda de Lumazeh and the Midbar are one and the same thing.
The other side of the field?
The other side.
And the bad side. No, that's
Not where you
not
want to
the
be.
same.
No.
Other side of
So for some strange reason, we put ourselves there.
Other side of the field.
It's not where we want to be.
Yeah, the bad side.
It's painful. It's painful for our neshama. La'aklis b'nei melech. So why? The Rebbe just said an amazing thing. What's Elul all about? Okay, there's all I'll use the vernacular. There's all these so-called. Now, not that this doesn't affect so-called religious observant people. Obviously, religious and observant people do aveiros. Right? There is something very fascinating about the fact that so-called non-religious and so-called non-observant people tend to be very annoyed when religious people do something that they consider to be wrong. Because religious people are supposed to act better than that, which is true. But it is interesting how upset. So I'm saying so-called because there's so-called religious, so-called non-religious. A yid is a yid, but the so-called non-religious person is very upset when they hear a story about the religious people doing something wrong, and they're right. But if anybody ever discusses that with you, you can ask them an interesting question which does make them think. And you're interested, hopefully, not to win an argument. You're interested in their welfare. And it's better for them to be close to God than to be in a place that's farther from God. You're not trying to win an argument. Mm-hmm. What you might say to them, calmly and hopefully lovingly, if religious people are better, why don't you want to be one? You're holding them to a higher standard. Well, then you're saying they're better. Well, why would you not want to be better? If you think that's a higher standard, why wouldn't you want to live according to that standard? What kind of car do you drive? 15-year-old Toyota Corolla or a 1-year-old Lexus? They usually drive, not everybody's driving a 1-year-old Lexus, right? But they're not, if they can afford it, they're driving the Lexus. Okay. So your car You're not settling for lower standard car. You're settling for, you want higher standard car. What kind of suit are you wearing? What kind of carpets you have in your house? You bought it all in Walmart, right? Well, sometimes yes, but sometimes no. And whatever they bought in Walmart, it was the best they could afford. So why does Yiddishkeit have to, your life have to be on a lower standard? If you think this is a higher standard, well, you just said that because you think those people are supposed to be better. And they're not. Why aren't they? Because they have a Yetzer Hara just like you. And they'll make mistakes just like you do. Oh, people, amazing. But that's why it's called the Chilul Hashem, which we have to be very, very, very careful about. Because whether you want to or not, if you're walking around with a yarmulke on your head and tzitzis hanging out your pants, you're representing God everywhere you go. You might not want to, but that's the way it goes. Right? It's just what you're doing. Right? So it's not fair, so to speak, but it's just the way the world works. But it is interesting. You can always ask someone. And if they pick on you because maybe you did something that's improper, which happens, right? Oh, a religious Jew talking to me that way? You're trying to steal money from me, so I'm not allowed to tell you that I think that that's improper. No, I thought Lubavitcher was into Avos Yisrael. Oh, yeah, we love everybody, but I mean, we're not necessarily interested in stealing money from you. But you can always ask, well, if Lubavitcher is so much better, so then why don't you want to be one? In Lubavitcher, we let people steal money from us. We're so chill. We're so nice. No. Okay. People think, love dafka when they're in front of you because they want to win an argument. But it's not about winning arguments. It's about bringing Jews closer to the Eibishter, which is a good thing to do. Kal Yedei, including that Jew who you happen to see in the mirror every day. Ki al Yedei tshuva the Yisrael. By virtue of the tshuva of Yisrael, the Melech comes into the field because he wants to affect those Jews who are farthest away. This is what I started to say before I went on that tangent. Right? The Melech is in the field, dafka for the Yidden who are far away, which is astounding. Elul is unfortunately, the only people ever heard of Elul are the people who happen to be a little closer, but the Eibishter is in the field because of everybody. And mostly, the Rebbe just said, mostly the people in the desert. Or that part of us that's in the desert. Ki al Yedei tshuva the Israel, that by virtue of the tshuva Yisrael shayu techila, that they were at first, but tachli sarichuk, in a very powerfully distant place. Mizgala oid yeser, it's revealed even more in that person of Pnimius the Israel. Shurtzainam amiti, that their true desire, gam b'shas hachet, even at the moment that they're doing an avera, what's their true desire? What's the desire of their nefesh elokis, which is true them? Hu belokus. And when do you see that most powerfully? When a Jew comes from a very far place and comes back to the Eibishter. Those are the stories people tell. People don't tell stories about from Jews putting on tefillin. Oh, you see? It's a guy, he's learning in yeshiva, he's been there 10 years, he put on tefillin today. Whoa, Jews are so amazing. People don't tell those stories. They'll tell the story about some guy who shows up at some tefillin thing and is asked to put on tefillin, and he's, what's tefillin? And they put tefillin on him, and Baruch Hashem, he's overcome, and he starts to cry, and he has a very powerful experience. Those are the stories we tell. Why? Well, because those are the stories that reveal the inner desire of the Yid for the Eibishter, no matter where they are and who they are. And they're true, those stories are quite amazing, but what do they reveal? They reveal something very powerful about the Jew. And what does the Jew want? Elokus. And so when he runs into Elokus, he's very powerfully affected by it. He might not run into it so often. Why? For whatever reason. Whatever turns his life took. There was an old poster in South Africa. I don't know why Dafka South Africa, but in South Africa, Lubavitch put out a poster. It had some guy who had earrings and piercings all over his face. His nose and his ears and his eyebrows. That's all you could see. And he's wearing tefillin. Is he wearing tefillin or not? I don't remember. That I don't remember. But below it says, and you say you don't have room for tefillin on your head. He's got room for everything else on his face, but I don't remember whether he was wearing tefillin or not. But there's always room. There's always room for tefillin. And it affects the Jew. It affects him. So why is the Jew where he is? Rakshi Yitzram who should talk from. Their Yetzer overcame them. The Rambam in Hilchos Gerushin, very, very, very famous Rambam that's quoted all the time in Chassidus, because it's an unbelievable thing. Al pi halacha. Amongst, if not the most serious aveira in the world, is improper moral behavior involving a woman who's married to someone else. There's very few aveiras that are worse than that in the Torah. Okay, so how does a woman who's married to Reuven become someone who could marry Shimon? Who's just get a divorce from Reuven? Okay, is that possible? Yes, that's possible. There's such a thing in the Torah. Okay, so now what if Reuven is a creep and he doesn't want to give this woman a divorce? So she's stuck. Well, we don't do this today for obvious reasons because of the society we live in and we're not in charge. But al pi halacha, what do you do to Reuven if he won't give his wife a get? You beat the living daylights out of him until he says, Reitza ani, I want. Based it, beats him up. I mean, not the judges aren't necessarily big enough. They find some guy who's, bigger, works out in the gym downstairs. I saw some new stuff down there, so it's getting exciting. Right? Okay. So they beat him up until he says, Reitza ani, I want. Now, that's a very strange thing because there happens to be a halacha that a man can't give a get against his will, under duress. It's not a get. It's not a proper bill of divorce. So then, how in the world what are we doing based on this? We're doing something quite astounding. We're allowing his wife to marry Shimon. If they're not divorced, that's about as bad as it gets. But we say they're divorced. Why? Because this guy got beaten up, and in the middle of the beating, he said, Right, Sonny, I'll give her the get. Okay, good. And he gives her the get. That's really what he wants? And we paskin it is. And the Rambam explains with those words you just read. Yitzram hu shetakfam. His Yetzer overcame him. Meaning, the Rambam says, what's his truth? This is the Rambam la'alocha. Allowing a married woman to marry someone else. What do we say about this guy? That his true desire is to do what God wants. What does God want? He wants you to give a get. Don't keep this woman captive. That's not proper. Give her a get. But he doesn't want him. What doesn't want him? His Yetzer Hara doesn't want her. We beat him up until his Yetzer Hara disappears and his true desire is revealed, and we call that get a get based on desire, proper will. That's an unbelievable halacha. But that's halacha. And the Rambam says, why? Because the only reason he didn't want to give the get, the Rambam says, Yitzroi, his, because we're talking about one guy. Yitzroi hu shetokfoi, the Rambam says. So the Rebbe put it in plural because he's talking about everybody. Why is that Jew in the midbar? Because his Yetzer Hara overcame him. But does he want to be in the midbar? No Jew wants to be in the midbar. Jew wants to be close to the Eibishter because that's what a Jew is. Right? Because we have a nefesh elokis. Every single Jew has a godly soul, and all that godly soul wants is to be close to God. We have this other voice in our head that drives us meshugah and says the stupidest things imaginable. Okay, say that, we live with this weirdo all the time. Right? Called our Yetzer Hara, called our nefesh bahamis, and sometimes nefesh bahamis. Sometimes nefesh bahamis is amazing, incredible, and interested in the most amazing things. Nefesh bahamis of everybody in this room got up early in the morning and said slichas, and then came to Chassidus, and that's your nefesh bahamis doing that. Because conscious you did it, and conscious you is your nefesh bahamis. Okay, that's amazing. But that same nefesh bahamis might do all sorts of things, and none of us have to do show and tell as to what your craziness is. But everybody has things in their head that are a little bizarre, right? Where do they come from? Nefesh bahamis. You might, something might pop in your head and go, oh, where'd that come from? Came from nefesh bahamis, right? Okay, I guess he's not perfect yet, huh? Okay. Doesn't mean you have to dwell on it. You can tell it to go away. But it came from somewhere in you, so to speak. But it's the part of you that's not the real you. The real you is your nefesh elokis. And what does nefesh elokis want? Eibishter. That's what this Maamer is all about. And the Tzemach Tzedek now says an amazing pshat in a pasuk that we read in the Torah 10 days ago. 10 days ago? Yeah. Kaperish Tzemach Tzedek. Ala pasuk. Ki besoda matzah. We're talking about the case in Parshas Seitzei. It talks about a woman who is defiled in the field. If she's defiled in the city, so then she's also obligated. So what does that mean? That means if she's defiled in a place where the city is just the mushal for this, in a place where she could save herself from this, but she doesn't, right? So then she's as responsible as him. But what if she's in a place where she can't save herself and she's overpowered? Right? Now that can obviously happen in a city just as much as in the field, but the way the pasuk describes it, that's in the field where there's no one to hear. Right? So Ki besoda matzah, in the field he found her. Saka hanara, the young woman cried out for someone to help her. Ve'ein mashiach, and no one's there to help her. So again, the Torah describes that as the field, right? There's no one there. In the city, there's someone there. Again, that means she could save herself from this, but she decides not to. Shagam kishanara neshama. Now, what's all this in Pneumius? That Tzemach said it says an amazing thing. Shagam kishanara, the young woman. Who's the young woman? The neshama. He besoda. Where is she? She's in the soda, the lumazeh, the negative soda. V'yaserimizu. Furthermore, shazeh garam. What happened? The fact that she's found in the soda, the fact that the neshama is found in a place that is a difficult place for it. Garam. This caused she'esav, ish soda, Esav, the man of the soda, meaning Nefesh Bamis, hichzik ba, grabbed her, v'shachavima, and lay with her. That's happening in Gashmias in the pasuk. What's happening in Ruchnias? The neshama is found in a place where it's difficult for the neshama, so Esav, ish soda, might grab her and lay with her. Meaning the Esav, Nefesh Bamis, might try to take over. Hine gam az harotzon the neshama hu b'kedusha. Even then, when Esav is grabbing the neshama, is grabbing this person, what's the true desire of that person, of the nara, of the neshama? Holiness. Vitzayekes, and she cries out, b'mar nafsha. Right? What does the pasuk say? She cries out, and the pasuk says there's no one to help her, because that's what's happening in Pshat. But let's see what this is in Pneumius. Hitzayekes, she cries out, b'mar nafsha. With the bitterness of her soul, she cries out, Al-Zesha Esav ish sada machzigba, that Esav, the person of the field, is holding on to her and grabbing her. Saka nara, the pasuk says that she cried out. Val yedei zeh, ayin Mashiach. Ein Mashiach in Pshat means there's no one there to hear her. Ayin is a level of godliness beyond yesh, beyond the level of godliness that's generally revealed in the worlds. Where, what do we say? How do we describe creation? As the creation of yesh, created reality, mi ayin, a level beyond the created reality. Not ain, but ayin. Right? So what's the pnimis of the pasuk? When the neshama is held captive by the ish soda, by the nefesh bahamis, in a place that's seemingly on some level devoid of elokus, the neshama cries out, va'ayin Mashiach, and a level of godliness beyond Seder Ishtalshalus saves her because she cried out to reconnect. She doesn't want to be separate from the Eibush to the Neshama. Shanim Shachla Yeshua. It's drawn down to her. Salvation mi bechinas ayin. The level of ayin, which is what? Shalamayla Ishtalshalus. Beyond that level of godliness that's usually clothed in the world. The level of godliness that's clothed in the world, all the worlds, but we're talking specifically about this world, obviously, because that's where this neshama is found, in a body in this world, sharing the body with the nefesh habahamis. And what might happen to that neshama? That neshama, because it's sharing the body with the nefesh habahamis, might be held captive in a place that's very, very far from Elokus.
Are we saying that that's only happening in Elul?
No, but the most powerful expression of it is in Elul. You can bring that about in yourself because you can do tshuva at any time. And you say the Yud Gimel Sarachim every day in davening, unless there's a chassan there. Or some other reason, right? Every time you say Tachlim, you say Yud Gimel Yisrachim, right? But Elul is a time when it's revealed in a much more powerful way, which means Elul, we talked about it earlier, Elul is a time where you can make certain achlatas, you can make certain resolutions, and it's going to be easier to keep them. Right? Not going to be easy, you have to work hard to do it, but it'll be easier in Elul. There'll be less opposition, internal opposition in Elul than at any other time. Might there still be internal opposition? Yes. There's always going to be internal opposition because it's called a Veda. God wants a Veda. What does a Veda mean? A Veda means, by definition, I could do something else. Right? If what we do relative to a Kadosh Baruch Hu is called a Veda, it's because the possibility of not doing it exists. So it makes Elam Hazeh so interesting and so enjoyable for a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Like the Rebbe said, what's the most amazing expression of the power of the Jewish soul? That even if it's far, far, far away, it still wants to come close. And sometimes you see that. We hear stories about that. Okay, so what did the Eibishter do existentially? He took the Jewish soul and put it far, far, far away and said, I want to see this soul express its true power. It's going to connect to me even down there. Now, interesting enough, in terms of everyday reality, in terms of the incredible pshat the Tzemach Tzedek just said in this pasuk, in terms of the level of godliness that's found in the world, is this Jew successfully dealing with that reality and finding the godliness in it? No. That's why he's in the midbar. Can't find the godliness in everyday reality. He's having a hard time. Elam Hazeh is controlling him or her on some level. Okay? But when the neshama of that Jew cries out, what does it do? It touches a place beyond that world, the level of godliness that's concealed in the world. So this Jew is evidently having a difficult time dealing with that reality, or else, and they're involved in behavior and that's not healthy for them because they can't see through the veneer that's covering up the godliness all around us. Right? Happens to everybody. So therefore, what they cry out, the neshama cries out from that place, and what happens? There's a revelation of a level of godly light that's more powerful than the godly light that's found around us at all times, and that level arouses in the Jew a desire to leave that place. They so to speak, were failing in their challenge of dealing with godliness in this world. They weren't fighting through the concealment, so the concealment was overcoming them. What's their salvation? Cry out to the Eibishter for the revelation of a level beyond that concealment, which will schlep them out of the darkness. Such a powerful light that it shines even in the dark. And that light they'll see. That's the light L'mayla Miseder Ishtashlis. That's the light that's revealed in the field. That's the king coming to the field. The Nara is out in the field. She's held by Esav Ish Sadeh. She's in the desert, close to the field. She's held by Esav Ish Sadeh, the one who is all about the Sadeh. He's not about the palace, he's about the Sadeh. She's held by him. She cries out, this little Neshamala. And who appears, so to speak? Ayin, a level of godliness beyond the power of Esav. What's that? What's revealed in that Yid? That Yid's true desire to be close to Kadosh Baruch Hu, and they can overcome anything with that desire. The Kaven Shegilui Ratzon Apinimi d'Yisrael, and since the revelation of this inner desire of the Jew, Shemitzad Shorsham Batzmus, and where does this come from? We've been saying this throughout the whole Maamer. The fact that you and I are sourced in the essence of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, so that's our true desires to be connected to the Eibishter. But what's the revelation of this? While you're there, Tshuva d'Yisrael, the most powerful revelation of it is through the tshuva of the Jews Shahayu Techila that were first Besada Delumazeh in the Midbar. So sociologically, what's the most powerful expression of the power of the Jewish soul?
Sure.
You. The fact that there's people sitting in this yeshiva learning Torah. It's where they grow up, most of them, in the Midbar. Anybody's fault? It's a matter of fault. That's not what the Rebbe's talking about. This isn't fault, it's just reality, right? For whatever reason, and we've talked about this before, and they had all the right intentions. Terrible mistake, but they had all the right intentions. There was basically a generation, everybody's family, it works out differently, but basically there was some generation of Jews that decided to hide, not tell their children who they really are. To hide that from them. And to tell them the way you're going to have a good life is by leading the life of the culture we find ourselves in now, as opposed to doing what your family has been doing for the last 3,200 years. We're going to hide that from you. We're not going to educate you about it. maybe in a little bit, there'll be like a little bit of education. It'll be just enough to turn you off it completely. You had that education, right? I also had that education. The last thing I would want after finishing grade 7 in Hebrew school, Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, and Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, which was really a pain in the neck because at 10 o'clock on the West Coast, the football games start. Because that 1 o'clock on the East Coast, which is 10 o'clock on the West Coast, so you had to miss at least the first half, if not more. There was only one game. It wasn't like there were 42 games on. There was one game. Right? 2 games, one on NBC and one on CBS. Right? I lived close enough to the border that we got those. Okay. Whoa, you're missing the football game because you have to hear about, whatever nonsense they were teaching us in Hebrew school. Serious nefesh for Jewish things. Right? And you think, okay, so Tuesday and Thursday was okay. Just explaining my tortured youth in Canada. Right? No. Because the Stanley Cup hockey game starts at 5 in the winter. Right? It's all on the East Coast. There weren't any teams on the West Coast. There were only 6 teams. They were all on the East Coast. So the hockey game starts at 5. And you're in Hebrew school from 4 to 6. Right? So you don't get home until the middle of the second period. Oh my gosh. You imagine the pain this poor child is going through. You imagine the pain and the shum is going through, the fact that that's all this child cares about. That wasn't all they cared about, but right, we did want to see the game. Okay. On the black and white TV. Jean Beliveau. Okay. So the most powerful expression of a Jewish neshama is the fact that someone that can grow up in some reality where they're not necessarily encountering Elokus in any serious way can desire it so powerfully that they'll completely change their life and connect to the Eibush. That's pretty astounding. Okay. And that's the panimis of every Yid. It's where every Yid is holding. That's why our problem, and we've talked about this so often, our problem is getting them in the door. You can't get the Jews in the door, but once you get them in the door so they hear something that's so naturally connected to who they really are that it usually, not always, but usually affects them. Just can't get them in the door to hear it. Right? So on a college campus, 250 kids will show up for Friday night dinner, which is amazing, incredible. But there's 3,000 who don't. And you can't get them in the door. Right. The 250, very rarely. I asked some kids after this year at Sinai Scholars. I was interested in this. So I asked a number of Sinai Scholars from different campuses. How many people come to Chabad for Friday night dinner and never show up again? They said, there are a few, but very few. Almost everybody who comes once keeps coming. At some interval, not after every week, but they'll keep coming. Very, very rare that someone will come and say, not for me, and go away. There are people like that. Well, what that is in spirituality, who knows? But, okay, but very rare. Why? Because a Yid wants Elokus. A Yid sees Shabbos and goes, wow, this is like really, what is this? What's happening? Why do I like this? And what are they missing? The bar. They're not at the bar, they're at the Chabad house. Now they'll go to the bar after the Chabad house. Say that, but they're at the Chabad house. They're missing something. And there's no drinks at the Chabad house. They're not allowed to give liquor, right? It's very, very draconian because the university is very, the university, right? They're very careful about their students not doing any alcohol or any drugs. I mean, we know how careful they are. Right? It's like, so if they serve wine for Kiddush, they'll bust the Chabad house. In the United States? In most places, no. It depends on obviously it depends on the administration of the university, but most universities, most Chabad houses are very, very careful about that because they have to be, because they're looking for them, because they want to get them. And they know that there's, some sacramental thing involved in wine. We're sacrificing making them drink that horrible wine that people usually serve for Kiddush. But, so there's a lot of grape juice. I mean, I'm not, I'm on college campus 2 or 3 times a year for Shabbos, but Sinai scholars, No wine, grape juice.
In Canada, everyone just goes there to get drunk to go to the bar after.
Oh, okay, there's the bar after, Beseder. But that's the joke of it. That's what's
You go
so...
to Chabad to get drunk. And then
Oh,
go to the
yeah?
bar, so put them on the-
Where? Which Chabad?
Chabad has to sit around Canada. It's like a shtick. Friday night.
Yeah?
You gotta try that.
Look at that. Good for Canada. There you go. Okay. But no, in America, that most campuses have real issues with that, but no one cares. Baruch Hashem. Or they bring their own. Whatever. So the Gili of Ratzon Apnimi Yisrael, where is that most powerfully expressed? The Yid who was in the Midbar. Lochena ilu ishanase b'yud gimel mideh, second last line. Therefore, the elevation that's brought about in that level of godliness that's revealed in Elul, called the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim, al yedei yuridosem v'hamshachosem lamata. Why is that level of godliness revealed? It's drawn down here, le'erder, to arouse as a adam, the person, to do tshuva. Who be'ikr? I'll be saying an amazing thing. Who be'ikr? What's the greatest elevation of this level of godliness? Al that it's arousing in those who originally were very far and they want to come close. So the most powerful elevation of the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim is not by virtue of the fact that those parts of us which are connected to the Eibishter and desire Elokus in a revealed way are inspired by all of that and feel an even greater connection, but dafka, the parts of us that aren't so connected, somehow the godly light hasn't penetrated into that place in our being, that place is also illuminated. That's the most powerful elevation of the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim, and that's why they come into Elam Hazeh. And so to put it in more general sociological terms, what's Elul all about? Yidden who aren't frum. Why does God show up down here? Because he cares about those Jews so much. And he wants them to have a fighting chance to come close. Okay, so now generally, unfortunately, who finds out about it? Who knows about it? The Yidden who are frum, and they're trying to take that place in them that's not so connected and connect it more powerfully. Okay, that's real, that's true. God wants that. But what's he really interested in? That Yid who doesn't know about him. So he's really interested in. Because he loves that Jew so much and he just wants to give that Jew the best thing in the world, which is a relationship with him. And for whatever reason, that Jew is just missing out. Through no fault of their own. They didn't make a conscious decision not to have anything to do with Elokus. Some people do, but that Jew didn't. It's just luck of the draw. And a Shema came down into a goof in some town in South Carolina. What are they supposed to do? Okay. As opposed to some body in Borough Park. Borough Park, you have a better chance. Okay, let's see. The Rebbe's finishing up the Maamer. We're obviously not going to finish today. We'll finish it tomorrow, Bez Hashem. V'zeu, and this is Ani L'Dodi v'Dodi Li. Now, we still don't quite understand exactly why it is that Ani L'Dodi is first. Right? The Rebbe hasn't explained that to us yet. V'zeu Ani L'Dodi v'Dodi Li Rashi Tevis El. V'yesh Leimar. Now, look at footnote 46. Oid beard was there. Another explanation of this. Say from my Melukat Dalet. That's the Maamer that we've been talking about. The other Ani L'Dodi. Now again, there's many more, but in terms of edited Maamer, there's two famous ones. So the other one, the Rebbe says, go look at the other one for another explanation. Okay, now when there's no footnote, so there is a footnote, and the footnote here says, it doesn't tell us the source of what the Rebbe is about to say. It says there's another explanation over there. So that usually means that what we're about to hear is here and nowhere else. In Chassidus, anywhere. It's a Chiddush of our Rebbe. Shevadoidi li shebarashi tevis Elul. That the Vadoidi li in Rashi tevis Elul Kai is relevant be'ikr essentially ala gilui the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim sheba Elul. Okay. That itself, I mean, it sounds like a rather innocuous statement in the context of everything we've been learning, but that's an incredibly important statement, because if we think way back, we were so much older then, we're younger than that now, but way, way back, the beginning of the Maamer, the Rebbe quotes the Alter Rebbe. And what is the pshat in ledodi li in the Alter Rebbe? Ani L'Dodi is what, and ledodi li is what? At the beginning of the Maamer, the first thing we learned about it. And if you don't remember, go look.
Isn't when we said that Ani L'Dodi, that's our work in Elul, and then Hashem's bring down in Tishrei, in Rosh Hashanah.
The simple pshat was that, what Tzvi just said. Beautiful, kol hakavod, well done. That ledodi li was Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Ani L'Dodi is our avodah in Elul. Ledodi li is the revelation of the Eibishter in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Why is it part of the acronym of Elul? It should, it's not Tishrei, it's not Elul, because the preparation for that is in Elul. That's the Alter Rebbe. Then we go on and say, but there must be, and this is, so to speak, the secondary aspect of ledodi li is there also must be some expression of ledodi li in Elul, because after all, it's part of the acronym of Elul. And what's that? What is the expression of ledodi li? Other, so to speak, secondary expression of ledodi li, according to the Alter Rebbe in Elul. What's that? What's the Rebbe? What? Yud Gimel Yisrachmi. Beautiful. Well done. Right? That's Yud Gimel Yisrachmi. And then we start. It's only Nesinas Koyach, and it's not an arousal, it's only an empowerment, and it's still a ledodi, and it's essentially avoided from below, and that's how everything works until Ois Dalet Hey, when the Rebbe turns everything upside down and says, no, it's this unbelievably powerful revelation from above. Yud Gimel Yisrachmim, Elul reveals the true you. That's Panim Seicha case, the Eibishter's essential pleasure, the Eibishter's essential pleasure, which is his pleasure in the essential existence of us, not what we do, but the fact that we are. That arouses in us that our essential tainug, our essential pleasure is him. And then the Rebbe says, and the chalal, the whole fact that the king's in the field, and the only reason the king is in the field is because he wants to see me, arouses in me a desire to go see the king. So it's not only an empowerment, it's clearly an arousal. And the first part of Maamer. That's the end. Ani L'Dodi now means that the revelation of the Eibishter in Elul reveals the true Ani. This is the last line in Ois Vav, right? The true Ani. And what does Ani want? Dodi. And that Ani in the last line in the edited Maamer has a different font. The Rebbe circled it, the Rebbe underlined it, something, right? The Rebbe said that's the word that you have to emphasize. Elul is the revelation of who you and I really are. And who are we really? A little piece of Elokus, and that's all we want. Okay. Now the Maamer could have stopped there and we all would go, whoa, wow. Now, then what? Well, now let's say Pshat and Dodi Li. We just said Pshat and Ani L'Dodi. We said at the beginning of Zion a couple of days ago. We said now we're sort of going to start talking about Dodi Li. Okay, and the Rebbe starts explaining what's Yud Gimel Yisrachmim and how's it work, what are they, and then we just got to where we got. Now the Rebbe just said something astounding. The Iker expression of Dodi Li, which the Alter Rebbe said was Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, our Rebbe just said the Iker expression is the revelation of the Yud Gimel Yisrachmim and Elul. It's really all about that. Okay. The Rebbe's not disagreeing with the Alter Rebbe, he's explaining things in a different way, based on the Alter Rebbe, but he's taking us to a different place. Is he allowed to do that? I guess so, because he just did. Right? Mo? Okay.
So is he saying that the secondary revelation is on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur?
He didn't say that. Right? He's saying the Iker revelation is on the look what he says. The Yesh Lemmer, the V'doidi li shebarash tevis Elul kai beIker brackets al gilu Yud Gimel Yisrachmim shebelul.
What's Baker then?
Essentially. Okay. Manyen mod. Oh. Now let's see what the Rebbe says. We're not going to understand it yet, but we'll see it, and then tomorrow we'll deal with it. So why is Ani L'Dodi before Dodi Li? Chronologically, what happens first? My Avodah?
Ledodi.
Dodi Li. Rosh Chodesh Elul at, it's either as the sun set on the 29th of Av, or it's when it got dark 25 minutes later, 35 minutes later, it depends what you hold, right? Okay, so at some point, there's a revelation of the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim on Rosh Chodesh Elul. Rosh Chodesh Aleph, Rosh Chodesh Beis, I don't know, right? Talk about it. Okay. Have I done anything yet? No. I might still actually be at the beach if Elul's in August. I might not have come home yet. Right? Just, talking about what happens in Av. I might still be on holiday. When did Yeshiva's Mayanot start? I don't know, Vav, Zion, I don't know. We started like some week later. Where were we Rosh Chodesh Elul? I don't know. Where were you? I don't know. The Eibishter came to the field. Had I started my Aveda yet? Everybody was aware of the fact that it's Rosh Chodesh Elul. Everybody started saying ledodi. The second day, and the first day we blew a little shofar. The second day we blew it for real. Okay, so we're starting. We're just getting started. The Eibishter is already down there in full glory right away. So chronologically, the first thing that happens is Dodi Li. And then Ani L'Dodi. Now, when at the beginning of the Maamer, the first thing we learned was that you and I initiate the relationship from below. That's Ani L'Dodi. Chronologically, that's Ani L'Dodi. And then there's a response from above, and that's Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. That's V'Dodi Li. And that's different than what time of year? Pesach, where the other pasuk. What's the other pasuk? Anybody remember the other pasuk? I mean, we only said it once or twice, right? But we didn't see it inside. Doidi li vani loi. My beloved is to me, and I am to him. What does that pasuk talk about? What time of year? Remember? Pesach. Thank you. Well done. Pesach. Unbelievable revelation from above. Makes, Kriyas Yamsuf, incredible stuff. And then finally, you and I go, maybe there's a God, right? After all that. Right? Doidi Li, unbelievable revelation. And Ani Loi, yeah, you know what? I'm in. And Elul's first Ani L'Dodi, Tshuva, Aveda from below, and then Doidi Li, a revelation from above. Now the Rebbe's turned this whole thing upside down. First, there's Doidi Li, which is the Yud Gimel Rachamim, and then Ani L'Dodi, which is you and I realizing who we really are, and a revelation of the Ani Amiti, who Ani really is. Why? Because of the revelation of Doidi Li, of Yud Gimel Rachamim, and so then I go to the Eibishter. A revelation of Ani, and then I go L'Dodi. That's what the Rebbe told us, the whole Maamer. The end of the, the last half of the Maamer. So why is it Ani L'Dodi v'Dodi Li? So let's just see what the Rebbe says fast, because it's after 8:30, and we'll explain it tomorrow as we finish the Maamer. But we did our review of the Maamer also just now. V'zeh shenemar v'Dodi Li lacharei Ani L'Dodi, which we're sort of waiting for. You explain this in a way that it doesn't make sense that it's Ani L'Dodi v'Dodi Li, even though Shagilui de Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim Shebe'elul. Even though now the Rebbe uses a really funny word, right? It's amazing the Rebbe uses it. It's almost like the Rebbe's smiling when he says this. Even though the Gilui of the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim Shebe'elul, who an Asinas Koyach, we're back to Asinas Koyach, we're back to empowerment, we're talking about Isarus. Rebbe uses Asinas Koyach again. Just to annoy us? I don't know. Right? Who an Asinas Koyach ala Aveda Ani L'Dodi, meaning what gives us the Koyach of Ani L'Dodi? So to speak, what comes first? First Doidi Li, and then we can do Ani L'Dodi. So why is it first Ani L'Dodi, then Doidi Li? Now let's just see the basic answer, and then we'll understand it tomorrow. Who kiba pnimius inyanim? In pnimius, Ani L'Dodi, Aveda Sa'adam, who Lamaila is a higher level than V'Dodi Li, Gilui Milamaila, the revelation from above. Okay, we'll stop there. What did the Rebbe just say? We'll explain it tomorrow. We don't understand it, but the Rebbe just said an unbelievable thing. This much we can understand from what we just read. You don't know how it works. We really do if we think about what we just learned, but we'll still have to flesh it out. that Ani L'Dodi is a higher level of godly reality than V'Dodi Li. Why is Ani L'Dodi first? In every other place in Chassidus, where you will learn about it, including all the sikhs of the Rebbe, all the Maamer of the Rebbe, if you will learn Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li, first there's the avodah chronologically. First there's the avodah from below, Ani L'Dodi, and then there's the response from above, V'Dodi Li. In this Maamer, what does the Rebbe say? Why is Ani L'Dodi first? Chronologically, which is first? Dodi Li. We're not talking chronology. We're not talking in time. What are we talking about? Level of godliness. Which is a higher level of godliness? Ani L'Dodi. Because what's Ani L'Dodi all about? The fact that you are connected to the essence of God. There's no higher level of godliness than that. And what's the second level? Dodi Li. What's Dodi Li? A revelation of an incredibly powerful godly light. The Yamim Noraim, which is a lower level. This is what we just learned in the last couple of days, which is a lower level than Ani L'Dodi. Now, the Rebbe will explain that to us tomorrow. But that's the pshat in Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li. It's not chronology at all in this Maamer. Higher level of godliness, the essence of God, that's Ani L'Dodi. That's you and the Eibishter. That's an essential connection. Dodi Li, that's light, godly light, infinite godly light. Amazing, incredible, fantastic. Not etzem. It's not the essence of God. It's the sunlight, not the sun, so to speak. It's amazing. It's not the sun. Etzem, that's the sun itself. Sunlight, incredible stuff. And inseparable from the essence on a certain level, but not the essence. Okay, see that tomorrow. It's unbelievable. There's no way in the world anybody would ever say such a thing without the Rebbe saying.